Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. I'd like to offer a few reflections on this very auspicious day, the Vesākha Puja celebration here at Amaravati on this beautiful summer's day. I'm very happy indeed to see so many people gathering together, particularly people from so many different countries. The community is really a global one, and it reminds me very much of the story of the dreams that the Buddha had the night before the enlightenment, or some days before the enlightenment. It describes how he had a number of very clear and significant dreams, and one of them was a dream of birds of many different colors all gathering around his feet, and then as they landed, they all turned white in color. They all kind of became unified in their color, and it's signifying the different strands of Indian society, the different groups and different castes in Indian society, all gathering together and, in a sense, being unified in their spiritual qualities. And so just today, coming in contact with people from Thailand, from Sri Lanka, from Burma, from India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Malaysia, Korea, Japan. I don't think we have a friend from Buryat, from Siberia, who comes once in a while. I think that's probably maybe the only Buddhist country not represented today. So it really is a great joy to see that Amaravati is a place that is a home for people of many different nationalities, different countries where Buddhism has been established for many years, and also from the United Kingdom, from Britain as well. A few of us Brits here, as well as the say representatives from many different Buddhist countries where the Buddha Sasana, the Buddhist religion, has been established for many centuries. So it's lovely to see us all joining together and being unified in this quality of being sahadhammikas, or fellow Dhamma-farers, or as the Buddha would put it, we are sisters and brothers in aging, sickness, and death. This is something that unifies all of us, that whether we happen to be young or old, whether our bodies are very mobile and functional, or not so mobile and not so functional, that we are all in the same boat. We all share these same human qualities, and so that coming together in a monastery, coming together to reflect on the Buddha's teachings, and also to be witness to the going forth of these two good people today, taking on the novices training. This helps to point to what we have, in common with each other, what we share in our human life. We all breathe, we all eat, we all have bodies, we all have minds. We share a life together. We're all part of a natural order. And as I was saying a few times during the ceremony, so much of the Buddha's teaching is pointed towards letting go of our self-centered view and changing the view of our life, and changing the view of our world from one that is self-centered to one that is Dhamma-centered, or centered upon nature. One of the teachings I often reflect upon at this time, that is a dialogue that you find in the middle-length discourses. It's called the Sutta on the Wonderful and the Marvelous. And I was recounting this on the full moon day, but I'll repeat it again today, because even though we've heard it before, or many of us have heard it before, it's a powerful source of reflection. And it recounts an incident where Ananda and a number of the monks were gathered together in a hall in one of the Buddha's monasteries, And Ananda was recounting to the group some of the stories around the miraculous events of the Buddha's birth, when the Bodhisattva was born in Lumpini, and how, say for example, that as soon as he was conceived in his mother's womb, then she didn't experience any kind of discomfort. Her mind became naturally virtuous and pure. She gave birth to him standing up. She was making the journey through the forest in Lumbini, and the baby arrived before she could reach their home, and so he was born in the forest. And that as soon as the baby was born, he was born while the mother was standing up. Queen Mahamaya was standing, and it said that devas, angelic beings, appeared to catch the baby and to say receive him on arrival and delivery. And then that warm and cool streams of water appeared from the air to bathe the newly born baby. And that as soon as he was born, then he immediately stood up and started walking. And then with each footstep, a lotus flower popped up from the ground under each step. And after taking 7 steps, then the infant Bodhisattva, the Siddhartha Gautama, raised his hand in the air and said, "I am the leader in the world. I am the foremost in the world." So that's all pretty miraculous, you know. There's some extraordinary stories, and whether we take them to be historically accurate, or whether we think of them as mythological tales, the stories are there, and that certainly when Ananda was recounting them, it was going through the detail of these stories, the people who are listening, the other Sangha members, are paying close attention and impressed and struck by the kind of power and wonder of these events. And after each of these descriptions, Ananda says, and this is a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Buddha, that these extraordinary and strange, miraculous events occurred just right at the time of his birth. So that's why it's called the Sutta on the Wonderful and the Marvelous. So then at this point in the account, then the Buddha arrives in the hall, and as he does frequently in these occasions, he says, because everyone stops talking as soon as the Buddha arrives, the Buddha walks into the room, of course, everything goes still. So then the Buddha says, "What were you talking about? What was the subject of discussion that you were engaged in that stopped when I arrived? What were you talking about?" So then Ananda, being blessed with perfect recall, then recounts all the details of what he was saying. And again, after each of these incidents, these amazing things about the mother of the Buddha's pregnancy and his birth and so forth, he says, "This is a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One." And the Buddha doesn't deny that any of those things happened. He doesn't say, "Well, it wasn't really that way at all." He listens and he accepts the account as Ananda has given it as an accurate record. And then at the end of Ananda's description, then the Buddha says, "Do you want to hear another wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata?" And as I imagine that incident, you can feel like, "Oh, I thought that was amazing enough already. Now the Buddha's going to tell us, the Master's going to tell us some even more amazing and incredible, sort of colourful things." And so then what the Buddha does at that point is he shifts the attention from the sort of miraculous and strange to what is really beneficial to us. And he says, when the Tathagata experiences a feeling arising in his mind, he knows this is a feeling. He knows it's arising, he knows it's abiding in the mind, he knows it's fading away. This too is a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. When a perception arises in the mind of the Tathagata, he knows this is a perception, as it arises, as it abides in the mind, as it fades away. This too is a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. When a thought arises in the mind of the Tathagata, he knows this is a thought arising in the mind. It's arising, it's abiding, and it's passing away. These too are wonderful and marvelous qualities of the Tathagata. So in Lumpur Sumedho's copy of the middle-length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya, which when I inherited his kuti, his dwelling, I also inherited his copy of the book. It's kind of highlighted and underlined, this whole paragraph is marked by his hand in the copy of the middle-length discourses, because Luang Por Sumedho felt this was such a significant and important teaching. Because we can all be dazzled. I mean, if I floated up into the air and started delivering this discourse from the lotus position, sort of whilst flying, that would probably get a few views on YouTube. I can see they got a camera running here that, wow, it's amazing, Ajahn Amaro is flying, wow, incredible, amazing, extraordinary. And then if I was delivering this discourse while I was flying, you'd probably be paying more attention to the fact that I was flying than the content of the words that I'm saying. That if I'm floating in the air saying, it's wonderful and marvelous that we can watch our minds, the attention would go to the fact that this person's flying. But what the Buddha is doing in this teaching is saying, okay, maybe as a baby I was able to walk and talk and flowers were popping up under my feet, but the real miracle, the amazing thing, the really wonderful miracle is we can watch our minds. That's a miracle that is really useful. That's something that's of extraordinary value and power. Because even if those stories are absolutely true, and that the Buddha at birth was able to walk and talk, and flowers were popping up out of the ground under his feet, how does that help us today, 2,500 years later? It's an amazing story. It's a powerful story, but the skeptical mind can go, yeah, well, that's just a story. It's just fairy tales. Who knows whether it really happened that way? But the fact that we can watch our minds right now, that is of immediate and direct significance. That has a power within our lives today that's guaranteed, that we can see it for ourselves and can benefit us very directly and fully. So that in that teaching, I feel it carries a spirit of the Buddha's way, which is tremendously practical. That he knew that even though he was an extraordinary person and he could just be an object of devotion, what was more important was, rather than just having a kind of powerful and inspiring, glamorous figure, a symbol to admire and to look up to, the Buddha was more of a practical teacher. He was what they can call he was a pragmatic teacher. So he was more like someone who gives you a set of tools and shows you how to use the tools, rather than saying, look how wonderful I am. I have reached complete and perfect enlightenment. Aren't you impressed? I mean, I'm deliberately using a sort of inflated language, but he doesn't. He says, enlightenment is possible. I would, if you take my word for it, I would say enlightenment is possible. And if you're interested in arriving at that quality of enlightenment, of really freeing your heart from suffering, from freeing your heart from insecurity, from unhappiness, from fear and craving and all the stresses and burdens of life, here are some tools. These are the tools. This is what they're called. This is how they work. And let me show you how to use them. So that I feel this is an incredible blessing, and one of the reasons why so many of us are gathered here together on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. We're not down at the beach. We're not at the fairground. We're not just sort of distracting ourselves, but rather giving our attention to gathering together with like-minded people to reflect on the Buddha's teachings and to say, take the Buddha's life and his wisdom as an example, because this has a power to change our life. So at this monastery, Amaravati, we emphasize the practice of meditation and the quality of virtue, living according to the precepts, and with the practice of meditation, along with the practice of dana or generosity, because particularly with meditation and with virtue, this is the way that we can most effectively watch our minds. If we want to be able to follow the Buddha's path and say, to know a sensation, to know a feeling as it arises, as it abides and passes away, to know a perception or a thought as it arises, abides, and passes away, then we have to bring our attention to the present moment. We have to know how to watch our minds. So one of the wonderful things that I feel very, very glad that Amaravati can provide is an ongoing instruction in meditation. Every week we have a Saturday afternoon meditation class. We have a retreat center where all the places are booked. It's a bit of a problem. We haven't got enough places to accommodate everyone who wants to come on retreat there. But I feel that the more that everyone can, say, take the opportunity to make time and put effort into meditation, then the more we will truly be able to watch our minds. And that when we are able to do that, it's transformative for ourselves and also for the people that we live with. Say, for example, if you have a feeling of jealousy or a feeling of anger, you're annoyed with your brother or your sister or your father or your child, as a wave of anger, of aversion comes up in your heart. So, if we don't know how to watch our minds, if we don't know how to do that, then we either follow that angry feeling and we find ourselves in an argument with our father or a mother or a child or a sibling, our partner, or we suppress that. We think, oh, I'm supposed to be a Buddhist. I'm trying to practice Buddhism. I shouldn't feel anger, and we bottle it up, and then it's likely to explode later on. But if we know how to watch our minds, we're able to know that mood, know that feeling of aversion. Somebody says something that we find upsetting, and we are able to know, oh, this is an angry feeling. This is an irritated feeling. And we can watch it arise, we can watch it as it takes shape, and we can watch it fade away. We don't have to suppress it, we don't have to follow it. So that in the Thai language, it's easy to express. You say, "Du arom, mai dam arom." You watch the mood rather than follow the mood. So that the more that we are able to commit our time, our effort, our energy to meditation, then the more that we are able to develop that skill. So then that has a direct effect on your family life, on your working life. If you feel angry with your boss or with somebody else on the street, if you're driving on the road and somebody cuts you off, how dare you? Then if you are able to watch that feeling, then you can find a way to work harmoniously with the people on the road, with the people in your office or your workplace, with the people in your family. You're not suppressing that feeling, but you're not following it, you're not buying into it either. So that benefits you, and it benefits the people that you work with, it benefits the people in your family also. So everyone gains, everyone benefits in that way. So that the teaching that the Buddha gave to Ananda and the other Sangha members on that occasion, that he wasn't joking. That's a wonderful and marvelous quality of the awake mind, is that we can know our feelings, we can know our thoughts, we can know our perceptions. When we do that, then again, this helps to shift the perspective from being self-centered to being one centered on Dhamma, or centered on nature. Because when we learn to watch the mind in this way, then a feeling of anger or aversion, or a feeling of fear or jealousy, a negative emotion, we can recognize, well, this is part of nature. This is something that is the result of being born in the human form. If you're a human being, you can experience jealousy, you can experience anger, you can experience fear, you can experience greed, just as you can experience love and kindness and compassion, generosity, unselfishness. You can experience caring and thoughtful feelings. We didn't invent these, right? Often if we have particularly negative emotions, we feel like, I've got a jealousy problem, or I've got a lust problem, or I've got an anger problem. Yeah, I'm a really angry person, I'm a lustful person, I'm a jealous person, I'm a fearful person. I've got a problem with this. We make it very personal. Or if it's our positive things, so we take those personally as well. I'm a very intelligent person, I'm a very creative person, I'm a very generous person. Maybe you even think I'm a really humble person. That's a bit weird. Sometimes it can be that I'm the most humble person in Amaravati. You know? It's like, what? But so we make it very personal, and yet we didn't invent kindness. You didn't invent compassion. You didn't invent wisdom. You didn't invent, just like you didn't invent anger or fear or greed. As a human being, we experience these qualities. They're part of the patterns of nature, just like the way that these oak timbers that form the framework and the pillars and the rafters of this temple. That's how oak works. The bricks and the cement in the walls. So that's how bricks are. That's how cement is. These stone tiles of the floor. That's how they are. I didn't invent the oak tree. I didn't invent limestone. That was all around before I showed up. I didn't invent anger. I didn't invent lust or fear. I didn't invent kindness or wisdom. So when we train the mind to watch to know itself, to watch its qualities, we can begin to recognize what we feel in our heart and what we take in such a personal way. These are patterns of nature. We feel it here in this heart, in this mind, but these are following the laws of nature, the shape of anger, the shape of fear, the shape of kindness, the shape of wisdom and love and generosity. They are patterns of nature, just like the grain of an oak timber or the shape of a silver birch leaf or the patterns of in the limestone tiles. These are patterns of nature. Or when we see things in a nature-centered way, a Dhamma-centered way, then it shifts the whole perspective. There's a whole different attitude towards life. So the things that are very positive and wholesome, we don't take them as achievements or like, look at me, I'm wonderful. We don't get conceited or inflated about that. And the things that are harmful and destructive, we don't get self-critical or filled with negativity about those. But rather, we recognize if it's unwholesome and say painful, then if that's followed, then it'll be difficult for me. It'll be difficult for others. If that angry feeling, that jealous feeling is followed, then this one will suffer, that one will suffer. Everybody suffers. We all lose. If it's a wholesome quality of generosity, of kindness, of compassion, of wisdom, then we recognize if that's acted on, if that's given energy and given life, then we benefit and others benefit, everybody benefits. So in this way, we're able to, recognize our life from a free of self-view. And one of Lumpur Sumedho's most recent books, I think the most recently published one, is called "Don't Take Your Life Personally." And I think that's the most wonderful book title. I think you could just have the title and all the pages of the book could be blank. All you need is the title. Just don't take your life personally. Because that's the whole story, isn't it? If we can just recognize this body, it's an aspect of nature, whether it's tall or short or fat or thin or dark or light. Does it really matter? It's like going up to an oak tree and saying, "You're overweight," or your skin is your bark is really wrinkled. You've got a lot of wrinkles. He said, "Well, I'm an oak tree." That's what oak trees are like. Or like going up to a birch and say, "Your skin's really smooth. Have you had Botox?" It's like, no, I'm a birch tree. We all look like this. The bark of a birch tree is smooth. The bark of an oak tree is wrinkled. That's how they are. But yet, how much effort and time and energy gets spent because of whether we've got oak bark instead of birch bark in terms of our skin and so forth. So when we shift the view, we let go of self-view and see this life and the lives of others in terms of Dhamma, then we recognize that if we don't take it personally, life gets a lot easier. It doesn't mean that we're kind of numb or we don't do anything. It doesn't mean that we don't take action or that we don't care. Not at all. We're able, in a sense, to be in tune with life in a much more harmonious way. We're not just reacting to like and dislike, gain and loss, and praise and criticism, but rather we're able to attune. So if you're planting an oak tree, you look after it like this. If you're planting a beech tree, you look after it like that. If you're planting a chrysanthemum or a rose, you look after it this way. If you're planting a geranium, you look after it that way. Different plants are looked after in different ways. Different aspects of our life need different things. But if we don't take it personally, we are able to look after our life, take care of our work, and look after the people around us with a lightness of heart, with a quality of adaptability. So in this way, I feel that the Luang Por Sumedho's book, the content is really good as well, but the title, it just to remember the title. Don't take your life personally. If you just need one little nugget of teaching, then that really is enough to take with us. Because if we don't take it personally, it lightens the heart so much. And that the things that are difficult and painful, it doesn't mean that we don't look after them or don't work with them. Like if you have strong tendencies towards feeling fear or insecurity or anger, it doesn't mean that we don't give attention to that, but we don't make it into my personal problem. We don't make it into something that is who and what we are, but we rather recognize this is a strong habit. This is the way that the mind. It's a tendency of the mind that's quite strong, but if it's followed, then painful consequences come with that. We recognize that and we can work with it, but we don't have to turn it into me and mine. Or when we shift the perspective in this way and let go of self-view, then we recognize that really the mind is not a person. The mind is a set of natural qualities. We think of my mind, my thoughts, my feelings, my memories, my emotions, my loves, my hates, a lot of a lot of me and mine. But if we take this principle of not taking life, don't take your life personally, then you recognize that the mind is not a person. The mind is an aspect of nature. And this is the Buddha's teaching on anatta and the development of wisdom, the panya paramita, the development of wisdom is centered around this quality. If we can recognize that the mind is not really a person, the mind is a set of natural qualities, then when the flow of experience, of feelings and perceptions, thoughts, memories, emotions, as we are bringing attention to that, as we watch those arising and taking shape, passing away, then the quality of of peacefulness, the quality of clarity, and the quality of freedom that is experienced in relationship to that is much, much stronger than if we are relating to everything in a personal way. If I say, my mind, I'm a person, I'm a man, I'm a Theravadan, I'm English, I'm 61 years old, I'm the abbot of Amaravati Monastery. All those I ams, they're like a box that we put our heart into, kind of a little tightly packed box. But when we see this body, this mind, this personality, these memories, these feelings as aspects of nature, it's like the walls of the box just flopping open. There's no limit. There's no sense of boundary. There's no sense of limitation. There's a quality of freedom and peace and ease that comes with that. So when people go forth, like our two new candidates, I've got their names, Jalito and Niraso, haven't quite memorized them myself yet. So Venerable Jalito and Venerable Niraso, taking on the novices training, it's precisely to support this kind of revisioning, reshaping the vision of this life as a human being, to change the view, to change the way that this life is experienced, taking on the robes, taking on the life of being penniless, taking on the dependency upon a teacher. These are all ways that the Buddha, say, established, the traditions and practices that he established to help support that letting go of self-view and living in a way based upon Dhamma. And particularly living on alms, that people are often, when they come to visit here, often people from outside the Buddhist tradition, they'll walk around and say, you got a lot of buildings here, and how many people live here? And you say, well, it's about 50 people live here, but there's usually about 80 people on average staying here overnight, all around the year. And say, well, how do you pay for this place? What do you charge? Or so it's all done on free will donations. And they go, really? So, yes, it's all just freely offered. There's no charge. You can't buy anything here. If you try to buy something, you can't. Everything is free. Everything is freely offered. And so people are amazed at that. But this, in a sense, is really learning to depend upon Dhamma, depending upon the natural order, rather than having your own sort of fixed security system. But going forth into the ochre robe and living with an alms bowl, your 1 baht, 1 baht to last you the rest of your life, or at least for the rest of the year. That is a gesture of trusting the Dhamma, rather than say, depending on material support or security of having money in the bank, or the other ways that we like to prop up our lives. So that gesture of going forth, it's say, stepping forth into the unknown. It's in a sense opening the heart to the quality of uncertainty, that you give up the use of money. If you live here at Amaravati, it's pretty likely that someone brought food today, some other people are going to bring some food tomorrow. Just in terms of statistics, there's a large number of people that support this place, but it is also a risk. And right now, Ajahn Vinita, one of the monks resident here, is walking on a tudong, walking through the countryside, just with his bowl and his robes and a minimum of camping gear. He's off in the Welsh mountains. He doesn't know where his food's going to come from tomorrow. There's not that many villages in that part of Wales either, but he's happy to walk, and he hasn't got any money, hasn't got a layperson with him. He's just walking on faith, and if somebody shows up and offers him some food, great. And if they don't, that's great too. He'll just keep walking. And so that spirit of going forth in faith and then trusting in the benevolence of the universe, that's very much the spirit of our lives and the spirit of the Buddha's way. And that when we make that gesture of going forth and trusting, then it also it brings a great freedom to our own heart. It helps us to not be reliant on the usual material dependencies, but also it has the effect on the world at large. And so other people, I don't know how exactly it's been for Ajahn Vinita. He's been keeping in touch every week or two, sending me a message, and he's been well fed so far. But the experience of many of us who've been on these long walks is that even if you do miss a meal 1 or 2 days or 2 or 3 days in a row, when you meet some people and they find out, you haven't eaten for 3 days, quick! Let me take you to the shop, and they'll load you up with plenty of food for that day, and then you've made their day. They've had a really lovely opportunity to help you, to practice generosity, and you've got enough energy and resources to keep on walking. So that sense of being ready to let go of guarantees, to be ready to let go of certainty, and to be open to what the universe offers. I think, again, most of us gathered here are not monastics, But for the lay community, I feel this is also a very beautiful example that the Buddha encouraged, because how much worry, how much anxiety do we have that things are not going to be exactly as I planned, exactly as I hoped for, that, that we want to know exactly how it's going to be. And the more fixed and rigid we are in our plan and our hope and our expectations, the more we create anxiety and tension within ourselves. And the more that we are open and are ready for whatever the universe offers, and we're more adaptable, then the more enjoyable we find life to be. That we are experiencing the sense of, well, I was expecting it to be like this, but instead it's turned out like that. Okay. So many years ago, I like to recollect how we had one of the senior monks, one of Ajahn Chah's senior disciples, Lumpur Jan, staying here in 88, 89. I think he stayed here for a year. And he'd never been outside of Thailand before, hardly even outside of northeast Thailand. And he was very much a kind of northeastern Thai lad, one of the earliest disciples of Ajahn Chah who'd been with him from the beginning. And coming to the West and living here at Amaravati and Chithurst, it was a really strange experience for him. He was amazed by escalators, like moving staircases, and the moving walkways in the airports. He thought they were great. He thought, oh, when my legs give out, I can get one of these in my monastery. Instead of doing walking meditation, I'll get two of them going in different directions, so I can just stand on one and go this way, then get on the other and go back the other way. So the many, many aspects of Western life were kind of amazing and wonderful to him. And many things were extremely surprising. And so we were a little bit, I was one of the junior monks here at that time, and we were always a bit cautious of sort of trying to set things up and do things in a good way for him, or trying to say, oh, it's going to be like this, or this person's going to come and visit. And so trying to sort of make sure he was okay for him. And over again, he would use this phrase, di mangan, that's good too. And that there were so many things he'd never met before, he'd never experienced before, that were kind of completely strange and unexpected for him. But he had this wonderful adaptability, like di mangan. And sometimes you could feel like he's like, oh, what? Okay, di mangan, that's good too. And it was a really wonderful teaching that someone who was, for whom it was so unexpected and so different, and yet he kept taking refuge in adaptability, that things that he'd never seen before, never had to deal with before, he was ready to give it a go. And never eaten that before, never worn that before, never had to deal with that before, but okay. And I feel that kind of di mangan, that's good too. That attitude for all of us, whether we're monastics or whether we're lay people, this is again a powerful presence in our lives, a part of the legacy of the Buddha's teachings. It encourages this quality of adaptability. And one of the things I frequently say here when people ask for advice, I will say, adaptability is the key to happiness. The more rigid we are, the more suffering we create, the more tension and stress. The more we're able to be adaptable and find that di mangan place in the heart, then the more we'll be able to deal with health and sickness, gain and loss, praise and criticism, comfort and discomfort. We'll be able to work with all of that, and not just becoming kind of, say, insensitive, but rather with our openness of heart, we can see that I was expecting this, but it's turned out like that. Okay, well, maybe I'll just go this direction instead. And we find that we are able to be more effective in our lives, more, say, in tune with things, in tune with the needs of the people around us, and in tune with our own capacities, our own interests, and what's possible for us. We can make better use of our own abilities, and also fit in more easily and more completely with the people around us, in our families, in the workplace, and on the street. So I will offer these thoughts for reflection on this Vesākha Puja day.